I'm not afraid of emotions. I believe it's important to acknowledge and express them appropriately. Understanding and communicating my feelings has helped me build stronger relationships and improve my mental well-being. Emotions are a natural part of being human, and embracing them can lead to personal growth and deeper connections with others. Story 1. I've seen this a few times on here, but it's too important not to reiterate. Normalize male caregivers. Like, what on earth? I had to babysit a 4-year-old a few weeks back, and the stares I was getting taking her to the park. Who asked you? Story 2. Not being laughed at for getting abused. It is horrible. You get constantly mentally and physically abused, but you can't defend yourself at all because you will be tagged as an abuser. The only thing you can do is ask for help. And when you do, you are getting laughed at. Forget this double standard situation. Story 3. As a father, I would appreciate it if the doctors and dentists would acknowledge me when I am there with my child and their mom. So many talk directly to their mom and never even look at me. One of them walked up to us and asked if she was the mom and then proceeded to tell her details. I cut in halfway and said, "And I am the dad." And she just gave me a look. Story for better mental health support, but that is not happening. Let me clarify further what I meant by this since I am getting mixed responses. When I say better mental health support, I mean society as a whole accepting the fact that men too can be vulnerable and that we should be able to seek help without being looked at as weak. Another thing is when I said that is not happening, I meant that right now and unfortunately for the future, society does not seem like it will want to change. There will always be double standards. In reality, no one will actually care because of societal standards and gender roles unless something major is done. Some people are saying that the change starts with you. While I do not disagree with this statement, it is not fully the truth. Society also plays a big role in the change. Instead of shaming and laughing at men for trying to be vulnerable, like they currently are doing right now, society should be trying to encourage men who need help to seek it and to also reassure them that there is nothing wrong with being vulnerable. How are men supposed to be motivated to change something as big as men's mental health awareness if society is against us? Kills our morale. So, in order for men to push for this change, society needs to change its ways and make the first big step. Story 5. Recognition of male domestic abuse and sexual assault by female perpetrators. Appropriate punishment for statutory rape cases. Protection of male rape victims regarding child support. Emotional acceptance of male feelings. Many men have stories of women claiming to be okay with men showing emotions, only to be turned off by it. Suicide prévention. Workplace death reduction. More support for male-specific cancers. Story 6. Rape of men being taken seriously. I hate it when they talk about prison and that certain people would likely be raped there because of how attractive they look or how vulnerable they are. Story 7. Wear my kilt on a night out without getting sexually harassed by women lifting it up all the time. The worst was New Year's Eve when it happened 5 times in one night, for by strangers and one by an office worker who tried to lift it up from the front. When I got affronted and shouted at them, they laughed and said it was just banter. So basically, it's fine to happen to a guy but never for a woman. Got it. Story 8. My brother is currently at the whim of his ex's decision regarding seeing his son. The court process takes absolutely ages, going on 2 years now with no end in sight, and she basically gets to decide when he gets to see him. It's slowly torturing and destroying him. So yeah, that, to all the guys who are going through this, I don't know how it feels, but I've seen what it does, and my heart goes out to you. The inequality is brutal, and I am yet to see it addressed or publicized in the same way that things like the gender pay gap, domestic violence, and other female-centric issues are addressed. Story 9. Fairer treatment in family and divorce courts. Recognition that men can also be victims of violent crimes like sexual assault and domestic violence. More homeless shelters for men. Abolish mandatory minimums. Story 10. Double standards need to end. I just saw a confession post where a boss and an employee have sex. The guy was 18 years old, and the boss was 36. If the boss was a man and the 18-year-old was a woman, people would be outraged. Either it's wrong in both situations or right in both situations. Double standards, especially in this case, are completely illogical. Story 11. These are all pretty heavy. I just want more options for men's jewelry. I'm sick of all my rings being silver and black. Edit. I understand gold is an option. I just don't care for gold jewelry. Story 12. There's a lot of double standards with men being viewed as creeps for doing things that women are perfectly fine doing. Edit. I think someone mentioned this, but being an unattractive guy just makes you seem creepy, so there's that. Story 13. Women of all sizes are advertised equally, while men with six-packs and over 6 feet tall is still the unrealistic standard. Men have next to no options for domestic abuse cases. Men get significantly longer sentences than women for the same crime. Men have a severe disadvantage in custody cases even when the mother is unfit. Male rape is not treated the same as female rape. Men generally get no options for paternity leave. Yes, it's a bit radical to compare, but a newborn needs both partners, to name a few. Story 14. I recently had a newborn baby, and my partner and I went to the registry office to register his name. My partner had complete say over whether I was named on the birth certificate, and without it, I would have had no legal rights whatsoever. There is some way to go before men are treated equally when it comes to being a parent. Story 15. Mandatory parental leave for both parents for a minimum of 3 months. Even women who just gave birth are fortunate to get 6 weeks paid leave right now. America is inadequate in some ways. Story 16. Penis jokes and height jokes should be treated like breast jokes and weight jokes. You don't really make them with people to whom it applies because you're basically telling them that their body is so pitiful it merits ridicule. Since you don't really know a man's penis size, you should be especially wary of saying something that might cause a lot of self-shame. Think of the thing you're most afraid of hearing from someone else. That gets implied to people in offhand comments all the time. Men need to get a bit of the spotlight here. Story 17. Paying for dates. Men work. Women work. Restaurant and entertainment bills should be split. This may sound obvious, but some women will say some variation of it's a turnoff, or it should be different than going out with friends if a guy doesn't immediately pay for everything, even if they're otherwise egalitarian. Story 18. Most male problems can literally be boiled down to the fact that, in general, people are more likely to be empathetic to women than they are to men. My biggest issue in being an advocate for male issues is an awareness. It's literally getting people to care, and they just can't be bothered. Alternatively, normalizing effeminate behavior in men. I've found that even the most progressive people out there aren't okay with feminine men. They'll talk the talk, but I've had a very sad number of progressive feminist types claim they want soft boys, only to reveal later that they really wanted someone traditionally masculine and gruff. As a feminine guy, it's really hard not to be embittered by this since it feels like people only want the toxic bad boy types they spend all day complaining about. Story 19. Definitely equality in the response to domestic violence. Every advertisement, police campaign I see lately always portrays women as the victims, along with new centers built for women who are victims. Police talk about abusers with terms like he, implying that the perpetrator is always the man and the woman is always the victim. I was trapped in a dark relationship where I suffered from emotional abuse. While I wasn't physically bruised, she often screamed at me and her kids, smashed up the house, and more. Eventually, I got out of it, but if I had sought support, I feel like I would have been laughed at. Story 20. Kinda meta, but having people take the issues you perceive seriously, instead of having them either continually argued against in polite society, or having it explained how the other sex has it so much worse. Story 21. Vulnerability. I can't tell you how many dates I've been on where girls openly talk about crying, whether it's over a test they failed or a sad movie. There are many women out there who say they want a man unafraid to express emotions, but if he ever admits to crying over the things I mentioned, it's seen as weird and that he's too sensitive. I can't tell you how often I hear about my guy friends telling me how women ran the other direction when they showed just a little bit of vulnerability. But on a positive note, there are many great, compassionate, kind women out there who love a sensitive man. You ladies are the most valuable players. Story 22. Equality for men, for me, comes in terms of emotional awareness and the ability to feel free and able to communicate when they are not okay without stigma. The fact that male suicide is at an all-time high and the majority of suicides are men is an absolute travesty. Story 23. The more serious things have already been mentioned. So I will add a more casual one, which is still important. Men are always expected to read signals and make the first move. It sucks. Story 24. My friend changed his mind about having sex with a girl at the last minute a couple of weeks ago. Right at the last minute. The girl lost her mind, shouted the house down, and stormed out, drunk. We had to go looking for an hour and bring her back. She bolted again. We brought her back again and sent her home in a taxi. Everyone was sympathetic to her, said it was unfair. Girls do this to us guys all the time. If the guy did the screaming over not getting laid, I would have probably ended up fighting with him. I definitely wouldn't have gone after him. If it was a guy, his reputation would be forever tarnished. I'd never look at him the same again. Things will never be equal. Story 25. Being able to watch the news at the gym without the women on machines in front of me thinking I'm staring at them. Everyone just assumes I'm objectifying her in some way or planning to harm her, and it makes being part of society difficult. I'm just trying to go about my business. Story 26. Infant circumcision for non-medically essential reasons being banned. Before circumcised individuals become defensive, just because you're happy with your situation doesn't mean we should continue the practice on infants. Being given a fair opportunity in the family court system concerning custody or division of assets. It's not as bad as it once was, but we still have progress to make. This includes changing social opinions to view men as equally capable of being primary caregivers to children as women. Having male victims of sexual abuse or domestic violence, especially those victimized by women, treated equally from both a legal and social standpoint. More shelters, less stigma, fewer justifications, less victim blaming, more therapeutic outlets. Male mental health issues being taken seriously instead of being openly parroted in media and society. Male vulnerability being seen as normal rather than weakness. I have objections to the health at every size movement and what has become of body positivity in its current form, but if we're going to have it, then there should be representation for men too, rather than it overwhelmingly favoring overweight women. Opt-out paternity testing everywhere, free of charge. Controversial, but I'd consider a man being able to sign away his rights and therefore any obligations of support for a child he doesn't want as a counterbalance to pro-choice laws. Story 27. I wish I got treated equally in a sexualized sense, if that makes sense. Often at work, I get harassed and sexualized so many times, and I hear many remarks made at me that often make me think, if this was the other way around, it would not be okay. But since I'm a man, it's magically okay to sexualize me and talk about my body to me like I'm a piece of meat. Story 28. Emotional acceptance would be the main one for me. I like to think I am a manly guy when I brush my beard, refine my woodworking skills, or modify broken household items so they are indestructible. I had a leftover 3/8-inch steel 3-foot rod and a broken broom. The rod fit perfectly inside the broom. Now it's a broom and home defense weapon. The truth is I am an emotional guy, and sometimes I can't express those emotions due to shame or embarrassment. It may not seem like a big deal, but it has always affected my daily life. Story 29. An understanding that men can be and often are victims of intimate partner abuse and that this is just as serious as when the tables are turned. A little while ago, Alex Jones was in the news for being allegedly abused by his wife, and the number of comments amounting to, well, he deserved it, was mind-boggling and sickening. Yeah, I don't like the dude, but nobody at all deserves that. It's one of the last bits of edgy humor you're allowed to play for laughs too. The emasculated worthless male being harangued by the burnt-out nag of a wife. South Park did this in their recent specials, and yeah, I know they cross lines, it's what they've done for 20 years, but the joke isn't quite as funny when it's almost verbatim an argument your partner launched on you for no apparent reason last week. There needs to be more equity in divorce law too. Many men in abusive relationships are afraid to leave because of very real fears that doing so will result in financial ruin and/or losing access to their kids. Family law needs an update from the antiquated ideas that women are uniquely suited to parenthood and in need of maintenance income by default. Story 30. Fairness in family court. A friend of mine, his wife cheated on him 3 times. Yes, it's his fault for staying with her all those times, but that's a topic for another time. He finally divorced her and was given shared custody of his two girls, but the ex was given the house, as well as child support and alimony. How is any of that fair? Story 31. Mental health support. There's still pressure on men to act like they don't have feelings and suppress any form of human emotion. This needs to be eliminated, and the effects, which can be devastating, need to be supported. There are other men's issues that are important to tackle, but in general, men's problems are low priority, given how many other groups have far greater problems to be tackled. Story 32. I agree this is minor, but it annoys me greatly. Splitting the freaking bill. I lost count of how many supposed feminists insist that men should pay for everything on a date. That is not being a gentleman. That is a commercial transaction, having him pay for your time. Story 33. That fathers are considered equal parents in the eyes of the courts. That yes, there are bad mothers out there that don't deserve to have custody, and it shouldn't take a book-sized amount of evidence to prove it.